initially able to do. Now, there's a lot more that the model is getting trained on, which is an assistant sort of work or an action performance work. If you look at some of these, you've got clock. So model is going to be able to access the clock and set, show, modify alarms, timers, so on. Right? It's also getting trained to sort of set reminders for you, set calendar events for you, set sort of calendar reminders, play songs from Spotify and YouTube both now. So it's not just YouTube, it's YouTube Music, Spotify, and generic YouTube as well. So all of these things is what the model is getting trained on, and this is exactly where we are going to evaluate the model. So is it able to perform based on these intents that are going to be set by the user? These are known as tools that are going to be available to the model. So it's very similar to, let's say, I ask you to go get me some flight information. You would go to a particular website, either Google Flights, Skyscanner, Make My Trip, Exigo, or something, and then be able to get that information from there. Similarly, tools are made available to the model as an accessible website or an API call. Model can go there, get information, and give it to you as a response directly. You don't have to make the search, and that's how model is being trained to become a true assistant to you. Right? So all of these tools are available to the model. How do you assess this? We will look at in one of the dimensions. However, one thing you need to remember, based on the intent of the user, the model will have specific tools. So if I am telling my model to set a reminder, model should essentially be using the reminder tool to do that task. Where do you know if the model used this or not? I will show you, but this is the reason the entire list is given to you. That model is going to use those kind of tools to perform your entire tasks. There may be 3 or 4 intents. Intent of the user is extremely important to us. Right? So if you look at this question, I almost forgot that I have to help with my kids' 3rd grade Valentine's party. Add it to my calendar for 11 a.m. on Valentine's Day. Right? So add this kid's 3rd grade party on the user's calendar at 11 a.m. on Valentine's Day. Get the ingredients for this drink. Now, next intent, the user also wants the model to look at this link and get the ingredients for a drink they're trying to make probably and save them somewhere. What do we essentially mean when we tell the model save something somewhere? Or when we tell ourselves that, okay, I need to save this somewhere. I'm looking for some ingredients and I need to save it somewhere. We essentially just try to make a note out of it. So implicitly, we also need to understand the user's intents. Okay. The user is saying, get the ingredients for this drink from this particular website, right? And save them somewhere so I can reference them later when I'm at the grocery store. So when probably the user is going to the grocery store, they want to be able to look at this list and buy the ingredients needed. So this is an implicit intent. Get the ingredients is an explicit one. Saving them somewhere is an implicit one, trying to make a note. So if you look at this, you have around 2 tools available to the model to make notes. One could be your notes and lists. Create, search, or view your notes and lists. The other one could be your, one second, there's something called a Google task that the model is able to do. You can look for that here. All right, I'll show it to you within the task itself. Okay, so like mentioned, model has more tools than available in this list. How would you get to know that? It's going to be very relevant to the question. So if model is using a tool that's outside of this list, but very relevant to the question itself, it is fine. Right? It has notes and lists. And there's another tool that the model has been using, which we've observed in this phase, is tasks itself. So Google Task is being used, and I'll show you how can we go ahead and check that as well. Right? So that's your 3rd intent. And the final intent is find the class party note. Now this is user specific information, class party note. Right? Where will you be able to find user specific information? In this context block only. So if you see, this is the user's phone directory. So sometimes model will be asked to send messages. If you look here, send a WhatsApp message, send a normal message, make a phone call. All of these things are going to be asked by the users, and the model has this phone directory to go ahead and perform that specific action. If you don't have my phone directory, you can't really call the person I want to call, because this is not information you'll get outside on the internet. So, this context is where user specific information will be given to you. So, some of the tasks would look like turn on the lights, right? For example, if I show you a task or two, turn on the master bedroom TV. This context will have all the devices that the user has connected to their model, and then the master bedroom will have the master bedroom TV. So essentially, the model is supposed to switch this on or turn this on. And that's exactly what the model should be evaluated on, if it did that particular task or not. Okay, so we will go through a few examples. Instead of just simply doing one entire answer, what I really plan on doing is show you different questions so that you have a good idea about the entire task. Right? Let's go back to the one that we were looking at. Give me a minute. All right. So we'll just go through this one. Not sure where the other one was, but if you remember that question, it was about setting an event for the third grade kids' birthday party at 11 a.m. on Valentine's Day, then finding ingredients from a specific link that was given for a drink, making a note about it somewhere, saving it somewhere basically, and then finally the user was asking, find a note from my notes about the class party and send it to my friend. Right? So then the model would essentially have to go through the phone directory, find that friend's name there, whatever the user has mentioned, and send them that note that would be given at the bottom. Okay, I hope this is making sense till here, guys. These tasks are a mix of multiple tools, multiple intents by the user. So, this is exactly what we need to start checking. You will have things like all the tools given there, you will have tasks associated to all of them, and probably a few things here and there. All right, cool. Let's go and start looking at the dimensions then. Like mentioned, I will quickly skim through the ones that we already know and go in a little bit more detail about the complex ones and some new ones. Okay, all right. Let's look at the dimensions then. Okay, so the first dimension that we have here is a punt. Now, what essentially is a punt? A punt is whenever the model refuses to answer the user. Right? What do I mean by that? The model sometimes would come back and say, sorry, I can't do this. So if you look at this, this is a classic example of that. Right? The question that the user asked was, find the village market near me and text Jackie and Andrew on messages with an ETA of about how many minutes away am I. So, two major intents. Find the village market near me. All right. This could be done using, if you look at the list, Google Maps, location searches, directions, etc. can be done using Google Maps. So the model should be using this tool and generating an answer. Right? So two intents, find the village market near me and then text Jackie and Andrew on messages with the ETA. Let's look at the responses. The model says, I was unable to find the village market near Collegedale, United States, so I cannot provide an ETA. I found one contact for Jackie. For Andrew, I found multiple contacts. Would you still like to send a message to Jackie and Andrew? If so, please specify which Andrew you would like to message. So both the models initially are refusing by saying they couldn't find the village market. Right? We will try and look at why were they not able to find, but this is essentially model refusing to answer. right? Model says sometimes I can't do this, I'm unable to do this. It could be for genuine reasons. Genuinely, there might not be a village market around, or it could just be that the model is not performing optimally at this point, right? So that is exactly what we will be checking in your punt. If the model refuses, then it is a punt. There are four categories here. The last one is just a normal response. So response is not a punt. So let's say the model doesn't refuse, then that's what you select. But within punt, you've got three types. One is your generic punt, when is the model refuses to perform your task. Let's say it refuses and then it gives you some extra information. This extra information may or may not be useful to you. So if the model says, sorry, I can't find the village market around you, but this is what you can do to go find it yourself. You can probably check it on Google search, type things around, check it on these following event websites so that you could probably see what's going around you and so on. All of that, even though the model refused, is useful extra information for me. That's either an alternative or gives me some related information. So gives you some related yet useful information or alternative solutions to find an answer. Let's say I tell the model, find me flights for the 10th of July 2025. Now the model cannot essentially do that for me, right? Because these dates are in the past. So it'll come back and say, sorry, I can't find you flights for 10th of July because these dates are in the past. However, if you change your dates, I can go ahead and do the task for you. So this asking for new dates is an alternative piece of information or an extra piece of information that is going to find an answer for you. Right? So always look at the language after the refusal. If it's just the refusal, that I can't do this because whatever, right? I was unable to find the village market near Collegedale, United States, so I cannot provide an ETA. Let's say your answer was just the first three lines. It doesn't matter what reason the model gives. If it's not giving any extra information like this, it becomes just a punt. The minute it refuses and gives you extra information, it starts becoming a useful or not a useful punt based on how useful is that extra information to you. If the information is useful to you, it's an alternative, it's helping you move closer to your answer, it's related to the prompt, then useful punt. If the extra information does not help you move closer to your answer, it's unrelated to the prompt, then it becomes not a useful punt. All right. So the distinction between all of this is just the refusal, may or may not have reasons, that does not matter. These two will have extra information even after the refusal. And this extra information is either your alternatives or your suggestions, clarification, questions, anything that helps the user get some utility out of it. Right? That becomes useful. And if it's not, then that becomes not a useful. After that is just your instruction following. So same four criterias that you've always had, no issues if everything is being followed by the model. Now this starts becoming extremely important for you to be very attentive. Like you're seeing, there are multiple intents and implicit intents within the queries themselves. So you will have to try and reread the question multiple times to be able to check the instruction following properly. So as we move ahead in our phases, the complexity of the tasks is going to keep increasing. So if your quality starts getting flat, it would mean that you wouldn't be a part of the project. Please make sure you're paying extra attention to all of these because these complex tasks do require that. Minor issue would be when obviously most instructions are followed, some of them are missed out, primary intent is still fulfilled at least. Then you've got it ignores, circumvents key components of the prompt, it's making the response unhelpful to the user and so on. Not applicable when there are no instructions given itself. Then you've got context awareness or context utilization. Now, if we are checking how aware is the model of their context, what are the two things that you check for? You look for the context block itself, right? So this also becomes a part of your context. And I think we just looked at one of the multi-turn questions, right? So this entire thing is also your context. This and your context block both become a part of your contextual awareness. In case both of them are not available, only when both are not available. Even if one of them is available, that becomes your context. If both are given, you consider both of them. In case both of them are not available, you straight away go ahead and mark it as a not applicable. All right. Give me a minute, guys. All right. Thank you. Sorry about that. Right. So in your contextual awareness, you will look for both the pieces if both of them are given. If one of them is given, you will consider one at least. If neither of them are given, only then you go ahead and mark not applicable. So the blue box that you guys would always see, that is a part of your context, and the multi-turn conversation itself becomes the context as well. So the model needs to consider both these pieces of information and then give you related answers. So if the model is using information from the context block correctly, if the model is using and following up information from your multi-tone conversation, then it's not an issue. If it doesn't, then you start flagging it as a minor or a major issue. In case both of them are absent, it becomes a not applicable. Then is your relevance. So whatever information is given to you, you need to check the relevance for that. How helpful is it? How relevant it is to your query, and if it's being repeated or not. If it's getting repeated, you will start flagging it. If it's irrelevant, unhelpful, you will start flagging that as well. So you need to check how relevant, which means the information given to you, how helpful is it to the user. Is the model talking about completely unrelated concepts there? Completeness, again, you will have the same three options that you've had. You will check if every single intent of the user was satisfied or not. So if you remember the first example we were looking at, where the user implicitly mentioned, identify the ingredients from this drink and save them somewhere so that I can refer to them when I go for my grocery shopping. If you don't make a note out of it, it implicitly meant make a note. If you don't make a note out of it, then how is the user going to get their intent fulfilled? And if the model fails to do that, then you will start flagging those things in completeness as well. Okay. Then you've got how well is the response written. So just your writing style and tone. Please pay special attention to detail here. There might be minor errors here and there, capitalization, punctuation, special characters not getting rendered, all of those things. So that's your writing style and tone. Then you've got AI assistant acting as a collaborative partner. So as usual, the first thing you will check is whether the question requires collaboration or not at all. And then if it does require collaboration, you will go ahead and check if it collaborated with the user or not. So how do you check if it requires collaboration or not? You will look at the question and understand if this particular question, which is your final one, if this specific question requires collaboration. So if you look at this example, the user is saying call the New York one, which means in these veterinary clinics, whichever one is at New York. So this one, right? So now the model can directly go ahead and do that. But if the model just said call one of them, right? Or call, then if it's ambiguous enough, broad enough, the model should come back and ask you, which one do you want me to call? Do you have a specific, I don't know, requirement that you need me to fulfill when I make a call? All of those kind of questions. Which one do you want me to call? Do you want me to check based on the distance, their ratings? What exactly is your criteria? Okay, so if the user query is ambiguous enough or it is broad enough, then the model needs to collaborate. If it's very specific, it does not really need to collaborate. Right? So you will first identify if it requires collaboration or not. If it does not require collaboration, you will mark not applicable on both of them. If it requires collaboration, you will check if the model collaborated or not, and then mark your no issue, minor issue, or major issue. Right? After that is your factual accuracy. So factual accuracy refers to your truthfulness basically. first thing you will do is go and identify if there are any claims in the model's response. If there are claims, then you will go ahead and start checking for the factual accuracy. Now, where can you check this? Until now, let's say your code outputs weren't given, you would go and check it on external web sources. Now, this code output itself, what do I mean by code output? So, after the model deploys the code, which is I asked it to go find something, and like I told you, it will use one of these tools. So, after it uses these tools, it gets a lot of information. So, it's almost like when you make a flight search on, let's say, Google Flights or Skyscanner, you'll get a lot of flight options, right? From there, you will select one. So, similarly, when the model uses these tools, it also gets a lot of information from the net available outside. From this, it gives you your final answer. So, this also becomes a source of truth because this is exactly what the model retrieved when performing your task. Right? So that becomes a source of truth. You can check your truthfulness against that. You can also check it against external sources. So web searches, etc. The first thing you will do is check it against the code output. Then you will go and check it against web searches if the code output is not enough. Again, if the user themselves is attaching a file and saying, based on this PDF, get me my information or summarize my notes, then that PDF itself becomes your source of truth. Right? So always identify claims first, and then first thing you will do is go to your code output. So it's going to be very clearly evident to you that after the code is deployed, I'll show you what this exactly means and how to check this as well immediately after this. But after the code is deployed, it generally gets code output information. What was it that it found from the source of information that it gave, right? So this essentially becomes your source of truth as well, because this is exactly what it found from the internet. Okay, so this is your first source of truth. If this is not sufficient, you can't verify it against this, you can make external searches on reliable websites. And along with that, if the user themselves is uploading a particular document, email thread, file, notes, information specific to the user coming from the context, you can check it against here. So all of these become your sources of truth. All right. After that, so if everything that you find in your response, whatever claims you identified, if all of them are true, no issues. Minor issue would be if your primary claim is correct, which means something that's directly related to your response is right, but things that are not directly affecting the intent of the user, if there's an inaccuracy there, that becomes a secondary issue. Right? So that's a minor issue here for us. Then you've got a major issue, which means your primary claim itself is wrong, right? Along with that, if you look at this specific description given, the code or the code output are incorrect, which means the code that we are seeing, if let's say the model was supposed to use Google Maps and it went ahead and used Google search or notes and messages or YouTube, and then it put in the wrong parameters also, or it used the right tool, let's say Google Maps, and it put in the wrong parameters that the user wanted flights from 1st to 10th, but you had asked it for flights from 10th to 20th. Now obviously, because it deployed the wrong code, the wrong output came, and due to which your wrong response was given to you. Okay? So if it helps you all better, I'll first take you through what the code looks like so that you'll understand this as well. Now let's say my question itself was to call one of those veterinary clinics. Right? Now, to be able to call the veterinary clinic, I need its number first, because in this particular response, the number is not given. I'm trying to help you all understand the code first, guys. Let's understand the code. All the other rubrics depend on that, right? So this factual accuracy major issue also depends on it. So let's understand the code first, and then the next 4 rubrics can be covered in the next 5 minutes. Okay, let's spend some time and understand this first. So the user's query was called the New York one. If you look at the New York one, there is no number. So what does the model have to do? It has to first go and find the number itself. Okay. Once it has to find the number, it can find the number based on Google Maps, right? So it has to go and deploy it, either Google Maps or search the veterinary clinic itself. So the most appropriate tools need to be used. It can't use something like YouTube to go and find numbers of places. So you will check this first and see which one is the most appropriate tool that the model should be using. Then it goes and deploys the tool, maps local, query places. So there are three parts to a tool: the tool itself, the function that the model is performing, which means what is it doing with this tool? Is it querying the place? Is it finding the place? Is it finding the location of the place? So this is the operation or the function that the model is performing on the tool. The first thing becomes your tool, then there's a dot, and then you have something called a function, which is what is the model doing with that tool. Once it deploys a function, it has to give some parameters to make its search. So after I go to Google Maps and I say I want to query, what do I want to query? Right? So essentially, when you are trying to make your flight search, let's say, you put in your start point, your destination, your time, let's say the date that you wanted for how many passengers. So all of those become parameters for you. That helps you refine the search. Imagine making a broad search from anywhere to anywhere in the world, right? Might not fit within your budget, might not fit within the kind of travel you like or the place you'd like to go. So parameters make the search even more refined and exactly gets what the user wants. So here, if you look, the tool that was deployed was Maps Local. Then it started querying places on maps. And then the query itself was this one, right? So if it queries that, it will start getting details. So it put in the query as NY, the veterinary clinic at NY. Got all the details about that place and got the phone number here. Next, what is it going to do? What did the user ask? Call. So even though the user just said call, we know that the model had to get the number first. So that's why it went and deployed Google Maps. Now to call, what's the most appropriate tool here? Phone. Because it says with the phone tool, it can make phone calls. So after that, the next code that the model would deploy is the phone tool. Right? So a code consists of your tool, function, and parameter. Now, after it finds out the number, it's going to again process the thought. So everything will start with a model's thought process. Sometimes it might be given, it might not be given. The model first digests the question, comes up with a plan to execute the action, and then starts performing the action by deploying codes. Okay. I will go through things again, guys. Anyone who's raising their hands to understand this again, I will go through this again towards the end for people who don't understand. But to just summarize what I mentioned, to perform the task that the model was asked by the user, the model needs to use certain tools to get the information. Right? So specific tools help the model get more refined information. Instead of Google searching everything, specific tools help the model do things. Now, to be able to send WhatsApp messages, Google search is not going to help the model send WhatsApp messages. It needs access to your WhatsApp to make WhatsApp calls, send WhatsApp messages, and so on. Right? Now, all of this is given as tools to you. After the number is found, then the model assimilated this information and said, now I need to call this. It's going to deploy the phone tool, say show call recipient choices as the function, and then deploy the specific number that it retrieved. All right. What the model is also trying to say, the distance is this much. Therefore, I need to use the phone show call recipient choices, which means show call recipient choices. I need to give choice to my user if they really want to call the person or not. Then check with my user first if they want to call this person. Right? Again, you will go to your code section then and check if everything was used correctly. The tool, the function, the parameter, then it's a no issue. Let's say the tool was used correctly, but the function and parameter could have been a little better. That makes it a minor issue. right? Along with that, if you also look at the second part of your criteria, so this is about the code section, guys. Once this is done, you will be able to understand the truthfulness major issue better. So we are looking at the code section. How do you evaluate it? There is one entire dimension. Does the code use the most appropriate tools, functions, and parameters to generate the response? So if the code successfully captures as much as possible from the user's intent and uses the correct tools, functions, and parameters to create a useful response, then it's a no issue. And if there are multi-tools, like we saw Google Maps, phones, etc., if there are multiple tool scenarios, then it should be used in the right sequence as well. That's when it becomes a no issue. Minor would be when better tool functions or parameters could be used to completely satisfy the intent of the user. So the tool used was correct, but functions and parameters could have been put in better. Okay, major would be, and the sequencing part here, if the sequencing could have been a little better to satisfy the user's intent, let's say it's a little jumbled up, then that's something that we need to flag as well. Major issue, when the sequencing does not make sense at all, the code is not satisfying the user's intent, it's using the incorrect tool, multiple critical parameters itself are missing, then that becomes a major issue. And the not applicable is when the code itself is not given to you. Okay. Now, when you are talking about the major issue part and truthfulness, this has a bearing here. So let's say the code was deployed incorrectly, the wrong parameters were put. Instead of asking for the number for the veterinary clinic from New York, it went and asked the model on Google Maps to get the number from New Jersey or Denmark. Okay? Then the code itself was deployed wrong. So the code output came wrong. And we know that the code output is used by the model to get your final response. That became incorrect now. Right? So this becomes a major issue. Let's say the code and code output were correct, but the final response was hallucinated, which means the final response has incorrect information that is not matching with your code output. That becomes a major issue. Cannot assess would be, we all already know, if you've been looking for this information through your code output, through your context blocks, through external information everywhere, and you're just not able to find any verified source to be able to prove this fact, for 15 minutes you've been doing this, then you mark it as a cannot assess. Not applicable is when there are no claims themselves in the responses. Okay. Then is your information retrieval as your next dimension. So if there are any documents, files, or emails, only these three things, nothing else will be tested here. If there is a document, file, or email, you need to check if the model used it properly and retrieved all the correct information. If it did so, document, file, or email will be given in the user prompt itself. Here, we don't have any document, file, or email, but let's say the user says, based on my file named AIN prompting in the drive, please summarize 10 points from it. It means there's a document that the model needs to refer. If it used that document properly and gave you the correct information, then that becomes a no issue. But let's say there is no document itself, it automatically becomes a not applicable. No document, file, or email is given. Minor issue and major issue when parts of information are not given or incorrect, and when nothing related is given, everything is incorrect, or nothing is given at all, even when the document was there. So document may or may not explicitly be given with the prompt, but if you look at your code section, you will see the model using a tool to track where this file is in the user's drive, getting it and giving you the information in the code output itself. So from there, you can check if the model accessed the document or not. Right? Then is your code. We already went through this. The next one is a subset of the code itself. Here you majorly check the sequence of the code. Right? So what you will check here is if the sequence was good, and in general, not specifically the tool, parameter, or the function. Right? In general, if the response that you're looking at aligns with the user's intent, no matter what code was deployed. Let's say YouTube was the most appropriate tool to get YouTube videos. Essentially, we need to get that. But what the model did was use Google search. Still got YouTube videos in the responses. Right? So as long as the response is not affected by the code, and in multi-tool scenarios, the sequence is right, then it's a no issue in this efficient sequence rubric for you. Right? So both of them check the sequence, both of them check the tool. One thing extra that the code itself checks is the tool, function, and parameter. This does not have a lot of bearing here. Only the tool has a bearing here. Okay. So if the sequence was right, the right tool was used, the final response generated was coherent with the user's intent, no issue. If the sequence was a little messed up, it could have been a little better. It did not completely make the response unhelpful. It partially fulfilled the user's intent. And let's say the sequence could have made the answer a little more better, then that's a minor. If the sequence was completely jumbled, did not make sense, didn't take into account any dependencies, which means, let's say I told my model, send an itinerary to my friend. I'm planning to take a vacation to Ooty with her. Include flight and hotel information. Right? Now, this means the model will have to first go and find flight and hotel information, make a note out of it, or just put it in a written response kind of thing, and then send a message to my friend. It can't send a message to my friend without finding this information, just because the user started the question with send a message to my friend. So model needs to take into account any dependencies and deploy the codes correctly. All right? Not applicable is when there is no code given. Code output you already know by now. So this information that comes out as a result of the codes being deployed, we need to check this. So essentially, how do you check this? Without looking at the response, if just this was given, because this is all the information that the model is fetching. So we need to check if it's at least fetching the right and the enough information or not. So just by looking at this, if you're able to fulfill the user's intent, this is your code output. Don't just go by these headers. You should always look at paragraphs like this, that is retrieved information as a result of the code being deployed. Okay. So all the raw information that the model can get from the internet, it puts it here and then generates an answer out of it. So just by looking at this answer, if it is able to fulfill the user's intent, then not an issue, right? So you will have multiple code outputs. You will have to check all of them and then see, just by looking at that, can the user's intent be satisfied? If it's completely satisfied, right, it can have a little bit of extra information. That's also fine as long as it's relevant to the user. So do not penalize it for that. If you're completely able to satisfy the user and the extra information is adding value to your answer, no issues. So the only thing you will check here is the code output part, not the response, guys. There's no relation with the response here. You are going to check the quality of the model's information, getting all the information in its output, right? So you will look at that code output section and then check it against your prompt if it's making sense, if it's going to answer the user's intent. Minor would be when the code output includes information that does not completely satisfy the user's intent. Some information is missing. Major is when looking at that information, everything is wrong. Nothing can be satisfied from the information given as per the user's intent. It does not answer the user's intent at all. Completely unrelated information is given there. Not applicable would be when the code output isn't available itself. Then, how good is the overall response quality? You all already know this. Documents will be shared with you where you can go and check how to mark this. But as the ground rule goes, you will count the number of major minor issues. If there are no issues at all, cannot be improved. Minor room for improvement would mean one or two minor issues, more than two minor issues, okay, one major issue, pretty bad, and so on. So you don't have to remember this at the top of your head. Instruction document will be shared, but you need to make sure that you're using the instruction document and only then selecting the right option. Do not just select it subjectively based on how you feel about the response. Very objectively, even when you've performed your fundamentals or the other tests, this has been given to you. So you will count the number of issues and only then select the right option. Based on the overall response qualities, you mark your Likert scale, right? Which means, let's say, if one is cannot be improved and the other one is minor room for improvement. So like we mentioned, a 1 point difference, which means either this and this, this and this, this and this. Adjacent ratings on two responses is a 1 point difference between the two. That becomes slightly better, right? If let's say one of them is cannot be improved and the other is horrible. So on either ends, if one is this and the other one is this, could be any response, vice versa, only then it becomes a much better, right? So A is much better or B is much better is only selected at that time. If one is cannot be improved, which is it does not have any issues at all, and the other one has multiple major issues. Anything in between, not a 1 point difference, not a continuum, and difference. Anything in between becomes a better. All right. Finally, you will write a justification wherein you will justify your response. So do not just write the issues that are there. You need to justify why this is an issue, what exactly is the issue, and how can the model improve, or how does this spoil the user's experience. So this justification format also, just give me a minute. I'll quickly share that on the screen. You need to strictly follow this. This will be sent to you as an instruction document as well. Please make sure that you're following this. Okay, give me 1 minute. So this document will be shared with you if you go to your final justification section. Very clearly, we've given you how do you justify errors. You need to provide evidence from the response to justify any errors you notice, include what the error is, why is it an issue, and how does it affect the user. All right. And then this is what you need to cover in your final justification as well. Compare both the responses and explain why you prefer one over the other. Don't just write A is better than B and leave it. Why is A better than B? Why did you prefer A over B? Right? Mention the response that was comparatively lower in quality, the rubrics that got affected, and how do you justify point 2 and 3 like this. And then you follow it up by one or two suggestions in the end. That's essentially your entire task. I am pausing the chat for a minute. I think it's already paused, and sharing the attendance form again so that no one misses out on that. You can fill that in case other people want to leave after this. And then I'll stay back for a few minutes trying to solve the doubts that you guys have. Right? So let me just quickly share the link again in case anyone missed out on it. Okay, guys, please take the attendance form and keep it for yourself so that you can fill it in. I'm going to open up the chat box now so that people who want to ask any questions can do so. I'll be here for a few minutes before I leave the session. So please make sure you're copying the attendance form somewhere. Once I open the chat box, you will most likely miss out on it. All right, guys, please put in your questions if you've got anything related to the query. Um, How to rate instruction following when there's a useful punt. So let's say I told the model that please find me the village market around me. Right? It could essentially find that because it just requires you to put in a location search. But let's say you look at the code section and you identify that, all right, it did deploy that, but essentially it just came back with, I don't know, uh, I think like if the model is not able to find it, it will mention it. But here, what the model says, I was unable to find it, right? So you go and check if actually the model did not get any results, which means there were no farmers market around or something like that. So if your punt is valid, which means the model refused for genuine reasons, that is a no issue because the model understood the instruction, but it just could not do it, right? Let's say if the model was able to do it and it still comes back and says, sorry, I can't do this for you. For example, I want to find flights for 10th of July. Obviously, the model can't do that. So it's going to come back and refuse. But if I want to find flights for 25th of July, model can do that. If it refuses there, it's punting for no reason, which means it is not following my instruction properly. So that starts becoming an issue. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Let me just quickly. Guys, if you continuously keep putting in questions, I'm not able to track anything. Just give me a minute. Let me just look at the questions. The project is a long standing project, so there are a lot of tasks. Um, Writing style and tone does not depend on punt or not. You're just going to look at the formatting of the response. No passcode received for office hours meet at 11 a.m. I will check that for you guys and get it done. If it's a punt, you do not skip anything. If you skip anything, you can't submit the response. So don't skip. You need to look at the response, look at the rubrics, and identify the most relevant one. It's not a 10-minute or a 20-minute, any time limit. Generally, these tasks do take around 20-25 minutes. If they are long enough, if they're like very small, then obviously it does not take as long. But please make sure you're not compromising on the quality. Alright, guys, there seems to be an issue with whoever received a meet link at 11 a.m. for office hours but did not receive the passcode. I will inform the team right after this, so they will take an action to that. All right. If the code output is missing, it becomes a not applicable. Like mentioned, if the code is not there, code output is not there, then they become not applicable. Okay. So, guys, like I mentioned at the start of the meet itself, that these tasks are extremely different, and that's why we called you all in. For people who've already done action extensions, this is like a refresher for you all. And for people who haven't sort of given the action extensions itself, but your scores have been great on the other ones, you guys were also invited here because we want to consider you for the project. So, based on your scores in your action extensions and the previous ones, if there are improvements that we require from your end, you might be asked to practice a little more. But if your scores are up to the mark, we will directly deploy you to the project. So you will receive your communications right after this call. Okay. I do understand the frustration, guys, that there are too many assessments, too many trainings. But I think after this call, even you have observed that the dimensions themselves are very different. So if you're just trained on like 4 dimensions, let's say, and you're directly deployed on the project, the quality does get compromised. And that's something that the client is not okay with. So we are forced to take these training sessions for you multiple times so that it gets a little easier for you to task as well. And your quality is not compromised. Because if you're not trained well, if you're not giving these assessments, we won't really know if you got it or not. And then when you start having quality issues on the production, you will directly be taken off from the project. So instead of giving you that experience where you're taken onto a project and then after 2 tasks you're taken off again, we want to ensure that you're well prepared, well assessed beforehand, so you go there and perform at the best of your quality. Okay. All right, guys, I'm going to end the session now. Thank you so much for attending today's call. I really hope you keep an eye out for the next emails. The passcode for the 11 a.m. meeting, I will get that issue sorted for all of you all. Project start date, the project is already in full swing in the last couple of days. There have been a lot of freelancers already tasking as well. Our internal team is tasking consistently. So the project is already in full swing. It really depends on how quickly you take an action based on the email that will be sent to you. Right? Thank you so much, guys. Have a really nice day. Thank you for attending this. I look forward to welcoming all of you all onto the project if you can clear the assessments. Thank you. Have a nice day.